This is the Maryland Hotel where I spent 2 nights in Luxor. And this is the inside of the hotel. And here's the dining room where I took 3 meals. This is where I bought my leather jacket. And this is my friend Morris.
Me? Okay, sir.
That's the street down there where I bought my jacket.
Asyut, hey.
Rather bumpy ride. Going through one of the many bazaars in Luxor. This was my carriage ride. My second carriage ride.
English command. Good chef. Thank you.
Maud?
We will miss you, brother. We will miss you very much.
I will never forget this. I'm here in a very, very fine clubhouse by the lawyers of Egypt here in Asyut, and we're looking out over the Nile, and we're going to have the only meal that they serve. This is the Lawyers Club, and it's seated on the Nile, as you will tell. I just had shish kebab, which is the only thing that they serve there. And once again, here are my hosts. We ordered a Coca-Cola, just for refreshment. The cushions were just delivered to make us comfortable, and the tablecloth was placed on the table. This is the Nile River. This is the west bank of the Nile River. His son, and he's multi-talented, and so whatever you see during the sermon, this is the man who's taking charge. This is a church, sort of like a courtyard, and it's just a few minutes before the services are to begin. And so this is where we're having our time, trying to catch up. We're lost. Which way should we go? It's 10 o'clock. Monday night. Now we are lost. We've been going down, down, down. The cobblestones are very, very slippery. I've almost fallen 3 times. And we're trying to get around to where we can see the temple area, the Temple Mount, or the Wailing Wall. We have lots of cats in the alley, but no people. Just trying to find the Temple Mount.
Should we just go back?
No, I don't want to go back to that.
No, we don't want to go back, they said. Well, this is the way they're going, so I'll follow. We're underneath the streets of the old city. I'm glad to be back up in the world. And we're back into the Jewish quarter. Everybody sighed relief. We got lost underground. This is the Temple Mount, the Dome of the Rock, the source where the trouble began, and we've been looking all over Jerusalem underground and finally came up above ground and found it. Good! And here we are. This is where the Muslim preacher preached a sermon of retaliation and challenge, stirred up the audience. The kids came out and began throwing rocks over the wall down here onto what you immediately recognize as the Wailing Wall. It's now about 10:30 in the evening on Monday night, the 23rd.
Over here.
Go back to the way.
Oh, yeah.
Go back to that.
It's 10:30 in the evening on Monday night, and people are still coming in. And we found our way out again. We just went an underground way to find the view that we had of the Temple Mountain railing wall. Are lost again. Which one's our guide? Yeah. Up, up, and we're able to talk again. Everybody's been saying shh, shh, shh. Now we're able to talk to one another. We're out of the Muslim area. Tower of David at night. My hotel is right down the street, about 1,000 feet, and we'll turn in just a minute. Once again, there's the Tower of David. And right here is the Gloria sign, and I walk down here. And my friend Henry,
Hi.
he's even held the flashlight for me when we were down under. And you'll see the rest of the group, they're almost to the Gloria Hotel. It is now 6:25, Tuesday morning. I have a nice new roommate whose name is Rich, and he said, look up in the sky and see the beautiful rainbow. It is the beginning of the early rains, as indicated in Deuteronomy. It's not raining right now, but we have this beautiful rainbow. Thank you, Lord. You might as well get acquainted with my new friend Rich. There we are.
How are we doing?
We slept well last night, didn't we?
Yes, we did. Without a doubt.
Without a doubt.
You'll still see women in here. We give you a tour of the country. It's not just the land that we want you to become familiar with. It's the culture as well. The
Tower
land
of
hasn't
David.
changed. In many ways,
Quoting the
culture
Bible.
as well.
Your neck
Because it's
is like the Tower of David.
through Easterners that we've been given scriptures. We read scriptures.
That means you've got a
with,
strong neck.
Western lenses.
You can carry a heavy
There are
load.
times when we need to take off our Western lenses and read scriptures. Just like the northern
David Street.
of the New Testament.
King David built the tower, and this is
Herod the
David
Great.
Street.
And Herod the Great built a palace that was on the opposite side of the structure to the south, of which there are was placed and his body was treated before it was placed in the tomb. And of course the tomb, the empty tomb, is the central portion, focus of this church. And if you walk through these entrances, I'm going to walk you past them. Take a left. Central portion of
Omar Mosque. This is what is recognized as the location of the crucifixion and the burial of Jesus, for reasons that I will share with you in the discussion.
a renewed interest in biblical scholars started again traveling across the sea and visiting this place. And they became very interested in finding the historically accurate location of places from the Bible, biblical locations.
No, I'll keep.
The tomb of Jesus and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. We'll talk about it. First century portion of a wall built by Hezekiah. This is my group on the other side of the glass. It contains the menorah.
The city of Jerusalem, we'll see even earlier examples of shops like this in the next couple of days when we start wandering around the Temple Mount. Now, inside the Temple Mount.
This pavement built 100 years after Jesus.
This is modern. This is all reconstructed. You can see this would have been. We would have was unified. They found that they had an old city without a Jewish quarter, because the Jewish quarter had been torn down. All the famous synagogues had been just utterly destroyed. The remains that we have here, the remains of one of the most famous. So that's where we're heading next. It's a segregated area, and then go on the left, and we're going to go on the right to see the But when you go there, right, they only ask you to cover your head and cover their head. So if you don't have anything to cover your head, there are temporary cardboard.
Oh, he wanted it, yeah. He wanted it.
My school's right around the corner. You'll notice this gate right up here, center. If you were to walk in that and go left a couple steps up, then you would be above the wall, looking down on the wall. That's where the Palestinian boys and people who had been in the mosque and heard the Palestinian preacher lead a call to a revolt of the heart in that morning sermon right there in the mosque. And so they came and began throwing rocks over the wall. This, of course, was a result of Sharon's coming to visit the Temple Mount with about 1,500 policemen, using a political disguise or a religious disguise to make a political statement. Very interesting. It's Tuesday night, and I got back from going all over the city of Jerusalem and the areas we could go, and I thought I would never, ever get back because of the steps and so forth that I've climbed. But I am here. I'm not going to have supper. It's about 5 o'clock, and I'm going to sleep till morning. I need it desperately. Over and out.
These were discovered after 19th City, and before they could start developing on the ruins of the Jewish quarter, they brought in their archaeologists to excavate and salvage this area. And one of the greatest finds of these excavations and salvage digs was this wall right here, which they call the Broad Wall. You'll notice how thick it is. Well, if you look up by those vines, that's the estimated height of this wall. Wow. And again, this wall was built roughly in the end of the 8th century BC by King Hezekiah. Now it's interesting because you can't really see it too well anymore, but you'll see that there's remains underneath the wall. What the archaeologists discovered was that during the process of building this wall, Hezekiah actually demolished a house. He demolished a house in order to clear the area and build this wall. And it's interesting because in the book of Isaiah, in chapter 22, where Isaiah is criticizing the people of Jerusalem for their misplaced faith, he has this to say. In verse 10, "You counted the houses of Jerusalem and tore down the houses to fortify the wall." It's really interesting. He might be referring to this. He's referring definitely to the construction of this wall. Whether he's referring to this specific house or not, we don't know. But I'm certain that Hezekiah probably tore down more houses than just this one right here. We just haven't found them yet.
Putting in a new freeway.
Correct. Correct. But this is an interesting chapter. Chapter 22, we're going to talk a little bit. Give you some idea of what the ground level was like up until 1967. In fact, I know people who remember being able to walk up to that arch and sit on the top of it. Since then, all of that has been excavated down by archaeologists over the last 30 years. This is the largest archaeological excavation in all of Israel, in the history of the state of Israel. And the things they found have been spectacular. Now, if you look at this drawing on page 157, this represents what that arch would have looked like when it was fully constructed. Today, the arch bears the name of the American theologian who discovered it, or rediscovered it, on a platform and see the temple from their homes. And in the mornings, it was just a quick walk down the hill and over to this archway to get up into the Temple Mount. Now, this was not the gateway that was used by the general populace. If you were a religious Jewish person from the Galilee or from the Jerusalem area and you wanted to come to the temple to worship, most likely you wouldn't be allowed in through this entrance. You'd have to come in the southern entranceway, which was the main entranceway. And
Arch to Temple Mount.
After we get done here, I'm going to take you over to that main entranceway. We're going to see a few more things there that the archaeologists have discovered. Somebody had asked me about if they had found anything when they went through the debris and rubble that was found on the Temple Mount, and I had to answer no, because they really haven't. But in going through this, not even the biggest stone that they've found used in the construction of this platform. Compare it at one point
Size
to
of
a
the
stone
stone
that's concealed. We're not going to see it on this trip, but there's one stone that we found that's estimated to weigh about the same. It had the same weight as a fully loaded 747. You have to understand that these were like naming their children after them. Deborah and Laura and Laura. Well, why would they go to her? My right.
100% accuracy. These are the steps that Jesus and his disciples walked upon.
We're going to see one more site today that I give a 100% to before lunch. If you want to see what a mikvah looks like, though, there's an excellent example right over there. There are a lot of remains to explore and get lost in. I want to give you some time to explore on your own and see. Roll. 1, 3. 1, 2, 3. By the way, do we want to launch that? Sure. That's fine, yeah.
These steps, 100% sure that Jesus and his disciples walked these steps numerous times.
But still, how did they miss out on the Yeah.
Looking down into a Second Temple period cistern. For clarification, this whole area is the southern wall. Excavation work. See the three arches. They're burial sites. This continues to be the southern wall, and we've worked our way from north to south. Well, from east to west, I believe. This is just sort of a parting shot from this area. Was it Deborah who sat under the palms? This equipment was not available in the past. They would like to have had this type of equipment, which is surprisingly not in the temple wall where we've been. I suspect our lecture is going to take place here, ruins of the city of David.
Shaped ridge that ran south of Mount Moriah, what we also call the Eastern Hill. The city of David is known in the book of Joshua and the book of Judges as the Jebusite city. That's because the people who lived here at the time of Joshua's conquest and during the period of the Judges were not Israelites. In fact, they probably weren't even Canaanites. They were called Jebusites. And the tribe of Benjamin, who had inherited this land, or this portion of the land, were unable to drive these Jebusites out. Now, it wasn't until King David took the throne in Hebron that he had a desire to unify the kingdom under one king and under one capital. And he brought his private force, his private army, which was led by Joab, the head of his army, and they came and they besieged this city. Now the archaeological remains that we have here really kind of tell us much of what this city would have looked like. Now, first thing I'd like to point out to you is, do you see these steps, the stepstone structure here running down? This is actually a glacis that was built, a fortification of a sloped wall of stone that was built in the 13th century, roughly speaking, probably by the Canaanites or the Jebusites. But when David and Joab came here, they would have been confronted with these fortifications here. So, I mean, these were left standing well into the time of the monarchy. And it wasn't until later periods that they began cutting into that structure and building terraces that they can build homes. You can see one home has been reconstructed there on top of the metal platform. So the slope of this ridge, this hot dog-shaped ridge, was terraced in order to build homes. And if you want to get a general idea of what the city of David would have looked like in the Old Testament time period, just look across the valley here into the modern city of Siloam, the modern Arab village of Siloam. That's roughly what the city would have looked like. Now you have to realize, we're getting a nice breeze here, but usually you don't get a nice breeze if it's lower down on the slopes of the city of David. You want to catch a nice breeze, you're going to want to build your palace up near the top of the ridge. And you could see how a gentleman walking out of the roof of his palace, looking down on the roofs of some of the houses around his dwelling, would be able to see a young lady bathing. I mean, Bathsheba probably thought that she was concealed from the rest of the city, but didn't realize that the king was looking down upon her. And looking out at Siloam, you can understand how that would have happened. Now, during the later periods, again, they started cutting into the structure, the stepstone structure, and building terraces in order to build homes. And when the Babylonians came around and conquered the city of Jerusalem and destroyed it, they would have destroyed all of these homes. In fact, there's a home off here, the remains of which were destroyed in a huge fire, which is attributed to the Babylonians. And among the remains that they found there is this structure, this little piece of stone there with a hole in the middle. It's a seat with a hole in the middle. What do you think it might be? It's a toilet. It's an ancient toilet. I should tell you what they found inside the ancient toilet. They sent those remains to a university in the States to be tested. And what they found in these ancient human excrement was evidence of trichinosis. How do you get trichinosis? Eating pork. Pork. Why do you think? Why do you think people who lived here in Jerusalem, in the city of David, during the Old Testament time period, could have contracted trichinosis? Any ideas?
Burgessa.
Liberal scholarship ran rampant with that.
Gadara.
But I think they tried to squeeze the lemon a little bit too much. You have to look at the historical context that these remains come to us from. Read through the book of Lamentations. I mean, what were these people eating? They were willing to eat anything. The city was under siege. They had no food. The city is then destroyed by the Babylonians, who weren't kosher. So you can almost even imagine a Babylonian officer, after a long, hard day of killing and destroying, using the facilities here. I don't know. These are all suggestions, but it's something interesting to think about.
The whole concept that it was destroyed because they were eating pork.
Sure, and then there's the whole concept that it was destroyed because they were not following the rules, more or less. One more thing to point out here. Up above, you see that corner there? And then there's actually another corner over here. Those are two towers. And what ran between the towers was a wall built by the Hasmoneans, built by the house that was founded by Judas the Maccabee. So this is about 200 years before Christ. So this is much later than the Old Testament city of David. However, it's interesting to point out because that city wall was some archaeologists theorize that city wall up there, built by the Hasmoneans, was built along the foundations of the city wall that was repaired and rebuilt by Nehemiah. And remember, the city that Nehemiah came back to, and the city walls that he helped rebuild. This was a different city than the city of Hezekiah. This was a shrunken city. It was a mere shadow of its former self. And so most likely the settlement and occupation on the eastern hill, the city of David was further up on top of the ridge and didn't occupy the entire hill the way it did during most of the Old Testament time period, during the earlier periods of history, during the reigns of David and Solomon, Hezekiah and Josiah. Any questions? Comments? Queries?
This is the Olivet Range. Not just Mount Olives, but a range leading all the way to the Red Sea, Dead Sea.
And if you follow the Kidron Valley all the way down to its termination at the Dead Sea, you are associated with you.
Eastern Hill.
They will surely turn your heart
Reading
away
from 1
after
Kings
other
11.
gods.
Solomon built temples for his wives up here on this ridge.
I'm sorry, the Mount of Olives here, the Kidron Valley, and the eastern hill that we're standing on.
Standing on Eastern Hill.
When we return to the school, we'll be walking up the central valley that separates the eastern hill from the western hill. The western hill is much higher in elevation than the eastern hill.
Reading Psalms 25.
Don't confuse it with the terracing the smaller stones up above. That's all modern.
Modern.
Those are modern attempts to terrace the slopes of the eastern hill.
Eastern Hill.
What did you say the other walls were?
Canaanite and then Israelite above it.
Canaanite, Israelite, modern.
How do you tell? This isn't a problem that's unique to Jerusalem. We see it at many other cities as well. Cities like Megiddo, all of these cities have the same
The Gihon Spring.
So this was a problem that was faced by King David and King Solomon on up until the time of King Hezekiah. Now remember, King Hezekiah's revolt took 4 years to prepare. First Kings.
Hezekiah.
The intrigue behind
First Kings. Hezekiah's tunnel.
King Solomon taking the throne.
Purification water.
Is that while David is on his deathbed, David's not dead yet. Adonijah, his oldest living son. Now the crown prince had already been murdered. Amnon was murdered by his half-brother, Absalom.
At this spring.
The waters that Hezekiah, after the death of King Hezekiah, they kind of
Hezekiah's tunnel led to the pool of Siloam. Hear the Muslim prayer. Walking uphill from the Kidron Valley, I don't know whether I can make it all the way or not. After about a mile's walk uphill, with help from my group, we are now at the Zion Gate. My pulse was 140 when I got to the top. Gateway, which makes it much more difficult for the invader to come into the wall without being shot at the turn. Shot by arrows or spears or lances or submachine guns, whatever the case may be.
The short-term programs we offer are for credit, like physical getting through the Bible, geographic and historical studies we have, which is similar to the program that you have, but it's a little bit longer and a little bit more content for credit. And in the summertime, we offer programs like Jesus and His Times, and also for people who like to be kid hands and dig.
He left Bethlehem forever. First moved to Hebron, and then he later conquered Jerusalem and made that his capital.
Bethlehem.
You'll note the valley that stands between us and the city. You can see a lot of the terracing that's used in the agriculture of this land. The soil type is very conducive to olive groves, and so that's what that's used. The plant type that we see the most here.
Is that sheep herder or Bedouin there, or just
He's Bedouin. Yeah, it's Bedouin. We have Bedouin all throughout the country, in the West Bank as well as in Israel, mainly in the south. You'll note also the watchtowers that have been built down there in the valley. Isaiah uses the imagery of the watchtower. So does Matthew picks up on this as well.
They're about a meter high.
Those towers down there, they're about, they look like they're about 2 to 3 meters high, actually. Do you see the stone structures down there?
what are they watching from the towers?
The watchtowers were usually built mainly with vineyards in order to protect the vineyard, or in order to, in this case, to look above the olive trees to watch the sheep. You see watchtowers throughout this area. Now again, I've already introduced you to the Herodium off there in the distance. And we discussed a little bit of the history behind the Herodium. Now this is the place that, according to Josephus, the Jewish historian of the 1st century, just like to read a few verses to you, and then I'll read a little bit out of Josephus as well, so we can shed a little bit of light on, which will be for all the people. For today in the city of David there has been born to you a Savior, who is Christ the Lord. This will be a sign for you. You will find a baby wrapped in cloths and lying in the manger. And suddenly there appeared with the angel a multitude of the a multitude of the heavenly host praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace among men, with whom he is well pleased." When the angels had gone away from them into heaven, the shepherds began saying to one another, "Let us go straight to Bethlehem then, and see this thing that has happened, which the Lord has made known to us." So they came in a hurry and found their way to Mary and Joseph and the baby as he lay in the manger. When they had seen this, they made known the statement which had been told to them about this child. And all who heard it wondered at the things which were told to them by the shepherds. But Mary treasured these things and pondering them in her heart. And the shepherds went back glorifying and praising God for all that they had heard. And when 8 days had passed before his circumcision, his name was then called Jesus, the name given by the angel before he was conceived in the womb. And when the days for their purification according to the law of Moses were completed, they brought him up to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord. As it is written in the law of the Lord, every firstborn male that opens the womb shall be called holy to the Lord, and to offer a sacrifice according to what was said of the law of the Lord, a pair of turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. And there was a man in Jerusalem whose name was Simeon, and this man was righteous and devout, looking for the consolation of Israel, and the Holy Spirit was upon him, and it had been revealed to him by the Holy Spirit that he would not see death before he had seen the Lord's Christ. And he came in the Spirit into the temple, and when the parents brought the child Jesus to carry out for him the custom of the law, and he took him into his arms and blessed him and said, "Now, Lord, you are releasing your bondservant to depart in peace, according to your word. For my eyes have seen your salvation, which you have prepared in the presence of all people, a light of revelation to the Gentiles, and the glory of your people Israel." It's interesting. Very good question. This is just a motif that's
Here are the Bedouin shepherds
that the gospel
on
writers
the hills
are
of
using
Bethlehem.
to signify the importance of Jesus being born in Bethlehem, Jesus being from the line of David. Together, that is the Church of the Nativity there. That is the traditional spot of the place where Jesus was born. Okay, let's discuss the history behind it a little bit, and we could see what we all think here. The history behind the church: piled dirt and then built retaining walls, and then piled dirt, creating what is called a glacis up
This is
along
the
those
Herodium,
retaining walls, creating
a man-made structure.
But actually,
Herod did
when you walk
everything
to
on a
the top,
grand
you go
scale.
down. So it's almost like a volcano, because the top, the mesa part, is hollowed out, and there are structures built down below, and there's all kinds of tunnels that run through it. Interesting place.
Good fortification that way.
Yes, it was excellent. It was an excellent fortification. In fact, all we know is it was a plant that was indigenous to this area.
A Jerusalem soccer arena. Lunchtime, just before we go into the Holocaust Museum. This fella's a tall guy. This is in the Hall of Remembrance, Holocaust Museum in Israel. This is the Children's Memorial at the Holocaust Museum. You can see the children in agony, hanging in various positions. The statue is called the Silent Cry. The Silent Cry.
Fought against Nazi Germany in World War II. and the Allied armies on all fronts, in the ranks of the partisans, in the ghettos, and in the underground movements in occupied Europe. Hundreds of thousands of them fell in battle. This monument dedicated to these fighters was inaugurated on the 40th anniversary of the Allied victory, which would have been August 5th.
I think the symbolism here is that this train is not going anyplace for you. Question mark from date of death. Israel is finally born. These are the ones of the dispersia, who effectively avoided the concentration camps. And are now apparently storming Jerusalem to claim it as their own. Entering into Israel for the occupation. I came in the back door, and I'm going through the museum, perhaps backwards. But this is a section that is designated to display the drama and agony of the children who were involved. Here, a father made a picture book for his children. This is a picture book of the Bible, obviously to try to maintain his family's faith during this period of Holocaust. And both of the parents were killed, the mother in Auschwitz. This is apparently the book that the father had prepared, pictures of the Christian faith, or was it the Jewish faith that he was keeping alive for his children?
Church with a steeple standing next to it. That sits at the crown or the crest of the Western Hill. That is what we call today Mount Zion. On the opposite side of that is the school, Jerusalem University College. So that is the Western Hill. Of course, separating the Western Hill from the Eastern Hill, or the City of David, is the Central Valley, which is almost impossible for us to see from here. So we have the Western Hill, the Eastern Hill, the Western Hill, the Central Valley, the Eastern Hill, and then the Kidron before us, and we're standing on the Mount of Olives. Now there's one more hill I want to point out to you. If we look across this forested, you see the trees there along the extension of the Mount of Olives. That is what we call the Hill of Desolation, or Mount of Desolation. That's where, according to the biblical text, Solomon would have set up his high places, the pagan gods. If you look way off in the distance, there's one ridge line there. With one lone tall antenna, and if you look to the right of that antenna, there's almost a palace-like structure tucked away in the trees. Can you all see that? Okay. That is what we call the High Commissioner's Palace, because during the British Mandate, the British relocated the seat of their government to that area there. Now there's a tradition behind that hill. The tradition is that is where the temple authorities made a deal with Judas to betray Jesus. And so therefore it's called the Hill of Evil Counsel. The Hill of Evil Counsel, way off there in the distance. Now it's a later tradition. It doesn't really have much as far as historical accuracy. But it's interesting because the High Commissioner's House that I pointed out to you today is the home of the UN on the Hill of Evil Counsel. Usually you could see the blue flag, but the last few days I have not seen the blue flag flying from that building. So it's kind of interesting. You might be able to get a good view of the Hinnon Valley from here. Can you see the Hinnon Valley? The deep face as it snakes around the Western Hill and gradually meets up with the winding course of the Kidron Valley. You get a good idea of its depth. A very deep, narrow arroyo, if you will. Okay, any questions? They're just developing for tourism. At tomb sites, at grave sites, it's custom in this area to leave stones. They won't blow away. They won't wither or fall. They're more lasting.
From the Mount of Olives. Perhaps a lower level, but the point where Jesus was taken by the devil to behold all that he could have had if he had just bowed down and worshipped the devil. Hebrew University on Mount Scopus. Here's the call to decline to go down and descend down the Mount of Olives.
He doesn't look very happy.
Get pictures, Vicky. On trees? Are you sure that's blueberries? These are the blueberries I've seen grow close to the ground. Don't eat one.
Olives toward the city of Jerusalem.
Of Mary Magdalene. It's a Russian Orthodox church built in typical Russian architectural style. Very beautiful. This road right here will curve around the Mount of Olives. You'll actually go between this nice little saddle that cuts down the lower southern portion of the Olivet Range, and you'll arrive in an Arab town called El Azariah, which is Bethany. Today the Arabs know it as Lazarus because of the resurrection of Lazarus there. There is a church that has a tomb that they purport to be the tomb of Lazarus, but it's a nice place to go and visit if you have the opportunity. Across the Kidron Valley, again we're getting a nice view of the Temple Mount platform, first built by King Herod. And you'll see that there's a gate that's been closed up. That is what we call the Golden Gate. The Golden Gate. Now, that gate was built by the Byzantines about 500-600 years after Christ. Wasn't used for very long. After the Muslim conquest, it was holed up. It was walled up. So, we're not really certain what the function of that gate was. We don't know why the gate was walled up either, although there's all kinds of speculation and theory. One of the theories is that the Jewish faithful believe that the Messiah will come to the Mount of Olives. Christian believers believe that the Messiah will return to the Mount of Olives. And so when the Muslims took over this land, they walled up that gate just to make it a little bit more difficult for him to come from the Mount of Olives and cross the Kidron Valley onto the Temple Mount.
Now what's that gate just to the right of it that's
Just to the right of it, that
been walled in completely?
I really don't see shape to its architecture. This is a very nice place to come and remember that event. And I'm just going to turn to Luke chapter 19. Beginning in verse 41. When he approached Jerusalem, he saw the city and he wept over it. So he'd be coming from the east, crossing over the Mount of Olives. And as he crossed over the Mount of Olives, he would have had a good view of just what we're looking at here, at the Temple Mount platform. But instead of the Dome of the Rock, he would have seen the house of the Lord. And he wept over the city, saying, "If you had known in this day, even you, the things which make for peace, but now they have been hidden from your eyes. For the days will come upon you when your enemies will throw up a barricade against you and surround you and hem you in on every side. And they will level you to the ground, and your children within you, and they will not leave in you one stone upon another, because you did not recognize the time of your visitation." Jesus is not weeping over his own fate, but over the fate of this city. The city that stood before him was a city that was completely unaware of who Jesus was, unaware of its own fate. This prophecy came true, was fulfilled within 40 years. When the Romans came and laid siege to the city, threw up a barricade wall that ran right through this valley here, surrounding the city of Jerusalem. They tore the city apart. When we were visiting the area around the Temple Mount platform, we saw piles of stones, piles and piles of stones. Do you remember that? Just think of this prophecy. This is a prophecy that was fulfilled. A city that did not realize who the Messiah was at the time. Today, especially today, we hear a lot of talk about the word peace. And it's interesting that in this prophecy, verse 42, there's almost a play on the word peace. If you had known in this day, even you, the things which make for peace, but now they have been hidden from your eyes. The word peace in Hebrew is shalom. And how you say Jerusalem in Hebrew is Yerushalayim. Yerushalom. Shalom, some people think, is an element in the city's name, the city of peace. The city of peace. If you had known peace, O city of peace, is essentially what Jesus is probably trying to say here. It's a whole play on words. A city that to this day does not know peace.
Are the signs around town in Hebrew then? The signs that we see?
Yes.
Are they in Hebrew?